Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another one of our March Madness webinars. Tonight, we'll be hearing some great information on birds. So I'm glad you've been able to join us. And I'd like to let you know if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We'll be answering them at the end of our presentation tonight. I'd like to introduce you to the executive committee. Vicki Lauren, who's our secretary, Ruth Steele Walker, who's co-interim treasurer and past president, Norm Shear, who is our current president. I'm Sue Augard. I'm the vice president and co-interim treasurer. And I'd like to introduce my good friend, Jenny Wanty. Jenny served as the MSU Master Naturalist Coordinator and worked in the Kent County MSU Horticulture Department for 13 years. She also serves on the West Michigan Conservation Network Board and works closely with Kent and Montcalm Conservation Districts. And Jenny's going to be introducing our guest speaker tonight. Take it away, Jenny.
Thank you, Sue. It is my pleasure to introduce the speaker tonight, Curtis Dykstra. Curtis graduated from Dordt College in Sioux Center, Iowa with a degree in environmental studies. He's been a teacher, a state park ranger in Eastern North Carolina, the assistant director of outdoor education at Camp Roger, which is out in Rockford. And since 2013, Curtis has been the naturalist for Ottawa County Parks and Rec. I know no one that knows more about birds and loves to share that passion with others than Curtis. He is also just an incredible educator. So you're really gonna enjoy the presentation this evening. So without further ado, the wonderful Curtis Dykstra.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to the committee for having me and giving me the opportunity to join you tonight to talk to you a little bit about birds and habitat. And so I'm going to share my screen here a minute. All right. Let me know if you can see that all right, Jenny. Everybody seeing that okay? All right.
You're good, Curtis.
All right, thank you. Just like to confirm, since I can't see myself on the other end, you know, that's the weird thing about this Zoom format, right, that we're all getting used to. As Jenny said, my name is Curtis Dykstra. I'm a parks naturalist with Ottawa County Parks, and I am thrilled to be with you tonight to give you a presentation on For the Birds, fostering backyard habitats to attract birds. The aim of this is to help give you some ideas on how to create intentional habitat structure in your yard and in your gardens that will benefit and attract birds for viewing and to benefit their needs as well, right? We like to enjoy the birds, and we like to know that the birds are enjoying good habitat too. So with that in mind, that's the aim of what we're going to do tonight. I will say a little caveat here. I'm more the utilitarian mindset when it comes to attracting the birds. Others have a lot of skill with how to arrange gardens and things to make them beautiful, and I love beautiful yards too. I'm going to be coming from more of the side of the utilitarian angle. So take what I have to say and incorporate it into your own yards in that manner. And I'm sure you could probably come up with some really beautiful, beautiful yards and incorporate some of these things just as I will be presenting them to you also. First of all, I want to introduce you to who I work for. I work for Ottawa County Parks, and we're located in West Michigan, just west of Grand Rapids. So we are just well, Grand Rapids is just off the map here. Jenison and Hudsonville there is just on the outskirts of Grand Rapids, and that is included in Ottawa County. We have Grand Haven and Holland. And I work for Ottawa County Parks and Recreation. We're a large county parks system I feel very honored to be a part of this system. It was a system that I really enjoyed myself before I worked for them. There are over 40 properties to choose from just within our county's borders, 28 parks, 12 open spaces, which are kind of more like a state game lands with hunting allowed and dogs off leash and no less development on the trails and things, and over 7,000 acres to explore. And those acreages are being added to, and we have some initiatives to have greenway pathways along the Grand River and along the Macatawa River, connecting the bike paths and things from Grand Rapids all the way out to Grand Haven along the Grand River. So there are, plug into what we're doing, and you'll find out more about the bike paths and things along the greenway there. Lots going on. But like I said, 7,000 acres to explore, lots of spaces to get out and enjoy the outdoors. And our focus is natural resource recreation opportunities. So we're in the business of preserving the natural ecosystems at these parks so that the wildlife can benefit, but also people can enjoy recreating in those areas. And as you can imagine, during COVID, our numbers of for visitation have gone through the roof. And that's a really good sign of what's going on out there. People are recognizing what's valuable. And so very happy to see that people are taking advantage of the parks. I work specifically at Hemlock Crossing Nature Center. The Nature Center is located at Hemlock Crossing, and it's at number 11 on the map there. So we're not too far inland from the lakeshore at Port Sheldon, West Olive area. And we've got a native garden in the front here that flowers real nice in the summertime. We've got a native restored prairie out front of the Nature Center as well. If I were to turn around in that picture there, you'd be able to see a restored prairie out there. We do wildflower walks in the spring at different parks around for the spring ephemerals, but then also as we get into June, we'll do the prairie wildflower walks in our native prairie there at the Nature Center. You can sign up online at myottawa.org/parks and find out more about what we offer there. Specifically, one of the things that I'd like to mention to you is the wildlife den. This is a room within the Nature Center that has a window out into our bird viewing area, into our bird feeder area. It's currently closed, but we're looking like we may open that up in a limited capacity in the very near future. Obviously, we're not going to have the number of people in there that you see in this photo, but we have a nice wildlife den with bird feeders outside. Unfortunately, we will actually be taking down the feeders at the beginning of April because of hemlock woolly adelgid, which is a whole nother story. It's an invasive species that can be spread by birds, and is a reason why people should take their feeders down when you get into spring if you have hemlock in your feeder vicinity, and we do. So we will have to be taking our feeders down in the near future. But we do public and private programming for school groups, for the general public, of a wide variety in nature. And you can check us out on our website, myottawa.org/parks. You can always email us at naturecenter@myottawa.org to learn more. And there is the view looking outside at our feeder area. Obviously, this is a little earlier in the season. We no longer have any snow. So let's get into it. How can you foster backyard habitats to attract birds? That's the big question. And if you're wondering what this backdrop for me is, these are some of the cues of some of the things that I'm going to be talking about tonight. So if you need a reference, that's why I put them there, so you can always look at it and reference what I'm talking about. And one of the main things that I'm going to keep coming back to is thinking like a bird. If we're going to attract birds, we have to think like them. What things are essential to your survival if you're a bird? How can you intentionally provide those things? And those things are pretty elementary when you think of habitat. Food, shelter, and water. Not necessarily in that order, but all three: food, water, shelter. These elements are essential to birds. And so if you think like a bird and how you would want food, how you would get shelter, and how you would obtain water, that will help you to, to think more soundly about creating habitat in your own yard to attract them. So we're going to go beyond, however, just using bird feeders to attract birds. That's the first thing we think of. And it is an important part and an important aspect of attracting birds to our yards, but it goes beyond that. So I will talk about bird feeders and seed and choices of seed and different types of food, but we're not going to live there and we're not going to stay there. We're going to go beyond that because providing shelter and providing water are create a triad that help us to attract birds better. Let me show you what I mean by that. Because we're going to turn the angry birds in our yard like this by using these three elements. We're going to turn them into happy birds, into birds that have all of the things that they need: the food, the water, the shelter. No matter your location, urban, suburban, rural. I'll be speaking on, like I said, the more bare bones utilitarian perspective in attracting birds. What do they essentially want? Their sense of utility doesn't always match our sense of aesthetics, but I'm gonna, like I said, do my best to address this. Again, my expertise is not necessarily in the gardening so much as it is in attracting birds. So take what I say and incorporate it into what you do to beautify your yards by thinking like a bird. First of all, food. What do birds really want? Essentially, what can we give them that will attract most bang for our buck, right? Bird food can get expensive. We can spend a lot of money on it. And I want to encourage you to get the right kind so that you're not wasting your money on seed that the birds don't use. The number one type of seed that I feed to birds and that I've had experience with is black oil sunflower seed. You can get it as a whole black oil sunflower like you see at the top of the screen here. That's in the hull. You can get it hullless as well, which is also labeled no mess. That means you get less mess underneath your feeder. It is a little more expensive, and if moisture gets in it, it can be a little bit harder to keep fresh for longer. But those are both great options. You can feed this seed to birds in many different ways. But what I want to say about it is you can buy this as a 100% black oil sunflower seed in the bag without it being a part of a mix. And a lot of people will say, well, why did my feeder get emptied so fast? I said, well, what kind of food are you using? Oh, one of those mixes that you get at the grocery store. And I said, well, you know what they're doing? They're tossing aside everything else and they're going in for those little black seeds that you see mixed in. That's the black oil sunflower. So if that's what they want, you might as well just give them what they want. And even if it's more expensive per pound to get this, you're actually not wasting anything. So black oil sunflower seed, you can put it in a tube feeder, like the one on the left where the chickadee is. I also like this feeder just to the right of that, with a cage around it that prevents larger birds from getting in on it and sometimes can discourage squirrels. I say discourage. There's nothing 100% to keep squirrels off, which we'll address later. You can put it on a tray feeder, like where you see the tufted titmouse here coming in to grab a snack. Hopper feeders are a good way to feed it, like you see down below that. Those are actually Carolina chickadees, if anybody's noticing and paying attention. I used to live in North Carolina. I had that picture. I really liked it. And that's a pine warbler in the background, which they winter down in North Carolina. The top right picture is another one of the feeders that we have here. It's a kind of a metal mesh feeder, and the birds can grab onto the outside and pull the seeds out. That's been a really popular feeder. And the cardinals and house finches have really liked this green feeder on the bottom right. That's a squirrel preventing feeder where it's weighted, and so if there's too much weight on the perch, it closes down in front of the feeder port and will prevent squirrels from accessing it that way. However, they'll grab onto the top and they'll hang over and grab seeds up out of there anyway. So it discourages, but it doesn't protect 100%. So those are some ways to feed the best kind of seed for birds, black oil sunflower. So The second type that I'll mention is black Niger or thistle seed, commonly known as thistle. This is a really good seed in attracting finches, in particular goldfinches. And if you're lucky and the year is good, we've got pine siskins or common redpolls that come into this as well, but particularly goldfinches because we have them year round here every year. The redpolls and the pine siskins can be periodic and not every year. One thing you want to make sure of with this seed is that it's really fresh. So you can take some of the seed and crush it between your fingernails here, and there should be a little oily residue that, I mean, just a tiny little splotch of oily residue. That means that the seed is still fresh. If it's dry and crusty, the goldfinches won't touch it. Goldfinches are a little more finicky, and the seed, since it's so small, can dry out a little faster. If it gets clumped up in your feeders too, dump it out and refresh it. Clean it out and refresh it. Keep your seed nice and fresh. If you want to test it out and see once if you've got goldfinches around and if they are coming to your feeders, you can try one of these sock feeders like you see on the left. That's just a cloth sock, and it works great. The one with the yellow top and bottom is the traditional type. However, there's only limited number of perches. You can see there's only 6 perches on that one. It can clump up a little more easily in that. So I've actually preferred the number where you see the number 2, where all the goldfinches are clinging onto the side. That's the same feeder in the right 2 pictures. They can cling onto the side. I've seen a dozen birds on that one feeder, even though it's smaller than the yellow one. Just make sure that when you put seed in the feeder that you take the feeder down and you agitate it, turn it upside down, back and forth, and see if there's any clumping. If there is, get rid of it. But that agitating actually helps to prevent clumping as well. So some tips there on feeding black Niger seed to attract finches. And on the ground. So different types of seed and different places where you feed it and different ways in which you feed it. You'll be getting the idea as I present this. They're all important in attracting a diversity of birds. Not all birds eat from one kind of feeder. You have to feed it to them in different places and in different ways if you want to attract a diverse array of birds. So on the ground is actually really good because there's several species that prefer to be on the ground, such as in this picture, the mourning doves, dark-eyed juncos, and American tree sparrows during the wintertime. The 2 sparrows there, the juncos and the tree sparrows, are winter visitors, and they almost solely feed on the ground. They'll come up to a feeder every once in a while, but they prefer to be on the ground. Same with mourning doves. They really prefer to be on the ground. Cardinals too, they can go both ways. They can get up to a feeder or be on the ground, but if you offer it to them on the ground, they'll also eat down there. So feed it to them where they want it. This fox sparrow is a nice migrant that we may catch any time now coming through. As we get into April, we should be seeing fox sparrows coming through on their way north, stopping at your feeders. So keep an eye out for that. So what do we use? Do we just grab that mix at the store? Well, you can, and that's about the only thing that it's good for is to throw it on the ground. But if you want to be real specific on what you feed birds on the ground, I like to mix it myself. And the ground mix is a mixture of cracked corn, millet, and if you can get straight 100% millet, great. I know Tractor Supply has it's like a backyard blend, but it's mostly millet with a few black oil sunflower seeds in it. It comes in kind of a green bag. That one's really good. That's what I use to mix with cracked corn and some more black oil sunflower seed and throw it on the ground. So again, millet, sunflower, and cracked corn. And the little red seeds that you see in there, the red millet, is what is really junk. And milo too, those are kind of the junk seeds. So look at what you buy, mix it up if you want to, and throw it on the ground. The cracked corn is good for the birds, but it's also good for the squirrels. And if you want to keep them from being motivated to climb up on your feeders, give them something on the ground. That helps. And I'll get to that more later. Oh, and the way in which you feed it, you can put it on a log. You can put like a stump in your yard and put it up like on a table, or you can even get a tray feeder like you see here, or even just sprinkle it right on the ground. Just make sure that you keep the area under your feeders clean by raking it up every once in a while as it builds up, and then putting fresh out. And suet. Suet is great for attracting woodpeckers in particular. There's a couple different ways that you can serve up suet. You can buy the cakes. That's the easiest way. That's the green container there in the top right. You see the yellow highlighted spot on there. That's what you want to look at when you want to pick out your suet cake. Here's a little closer view at what it says. It says crude protein, crude fat. The crude fat is 54% on this particular type. This Royal Wing comes from Tractor Supply. But if you're looking through the suets, look for that number and that number only. Don't look at how good it looks for you to put it on your own plate and eat it, because remember, you're thinking like a bird, not like you. And a lot of these suets are being sold to you. Like if you think it looks like it's good to eat, well, then birds certainly will. Well, honestly, they're looking for the crude fat content. And if you can get over 30, you're doing pretty good. If you can get over 50 like this, that's doing really good. And typically I'll find that number with the woodpecker suets and the peanut suets. But if you really want to give them what they want, you give it to them raw. Check in with your local butcher and see once if they sell it. Some grocery stores sell it if they've got a butcher. I know Horrocks does on the east side of Grand Rapids there. And a few other grocery stores. If you know of any, you can always put it in the chat there so other people can know kind of where to find it. Of course, some people like to keep it a little bit secret where they get their suet because there's not always a whole lot of supply. So, talk to your local butcher and see if they will offer 100% crude fat content raw suet, because that is great, especially in the cold months when it doesn't go bad outside. During the summer months, you may opt for the suet cakes because it is warmer out. But that they love the raw suet for sure. Of course, you can buy the raw suet and you can render it yourself by melting it and straining it and putting it into a little cast and create your own mixes as too by mixing peanut butter in and other things. You can find all kinds of recipes online. But those are some tips there for woodpeckers in particular, but other birds like this pine warbler also like to come into suet. Even our resident birds like chickadees and titmice and things will visit suet. White-breasted nuthatches will do that as well, but in particular woodpeckers. And the last type of food that I'm going to talk about is hummingbirds and orioles. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but other than to say that the last week of April is when you want to get your feeders out. Okay, try to beat May 1st. The first orioles and hummingbirds typically show up in the last few days of April. So beat them to the punch, get it out there in the last week of April. I prefer the saucer style that you see pictured here because it's a lot easier to clean, it's a lot easier to fill, it's a lot harder for bees to get at the nectar down below. There's a lot of positives to it. If you want to learn more about that type of feeder, there's a video that is in the resource page that should be available to all of you. There's a PDF that I sent that has some links to some videos and other resources. And this video that you see down on the bottom left, I created last spring about how to feed hummingbirds and orioles. And so you can check that out on the resource page that is coming your way. But just in general, a 4-to-1 water to sugar for hummingbirds and a 6-to-1 for orioles. That's 6-part water to 1 part sugar for orioles. Heat some water, dissolve it in there, and you've got your own nectar. Don't use the store brands with the red dyes in it and things. It's unnecessary. Just straight up sugar is good. You want to clean it twice a week, especially in the warmer months. Make sure that it stays nice and clean, and you will keep your hummingbirds and orioles happy. Oranges and jelly, in particular, jelly with real sugar and that's organic, is best for the orioles. And May is the best month to feed orioles. That's when they need that high energy the most. As you get toward the end of May, then they tend to come to feeders less. Some people will get them all summer long. But in particular in April, when they need the high energy that just come in from migration and they haven't started feeding on insects yet for nesting. When they're nesting, they feed on a lot more insects. So there you go, a little bit on that. Problems at feeders, like I said, I was going to deal with squirrels, right? There's that squirrel hanging off of our mesh feeder. How do you deal with squirrels? Basically, think of it as access and food preferences, okay? The picture in the bottom corner there, You want to have your feeder about 5 to 8 feet up off the ground with a baffle about 4 feet up off the ground so that they can't jump around it. But that also means that you don't have a shrub or a bush right below your feeder so that they can climb up in that and jump over top of your baffle. It also means you want to look overhead because any low branches less than 10 feet above your feeder are potential problems for squirrels to climb out on it and drop down to your feeder. I have seen a squirrel do that. I think it probably broke a few ribs doing it, but they are persistent and will do it. I would, before cutting those branches, I would watch the squirrels first. And if they are accessing it that way, then consider cutting it, because you don't want to cut too many branches because the birds also use those branches. So always got to find a balance in what your preference is. You also want to keep these feeders about 8 to 10 feet from the tree. The further away from the tree, the safer it is from squirrels jumping from the trunk out to the feeder. Food preferences. Give them what they want on the ground. Cracked corn, if you put a little black oil sunflower seed on the ground, great. You can even put up a squirrel feeder if you want, one that they can have full access to, and then it'll keep them off with the rest of your feeders. And if you can't do it quite that way, you can change to a safflower feed, which is the white seed that's pretty much an equivalent to sunflower seed. If you do that, the squirrels don't tend to prefer that food. Hawks, they got to eat too, right? They cycle through our yards because we're offering it to them, right? We're offering birds food, and those birds become food for other birds. And so I like to think of it that way. They're part of the ecosystem too. However, if they become problematic in your yard, you can always take your feeders down for a few days and help them to move on. Hopefully they don't get rid of all of your birds, but maybe they get rid of a few house sparrows and starlings, right? Cats, keep your cats indoors because cats kill lots of birds. Even if you feed the cat isn't satisfied, that's not enough. They'll still hunt birds even when they're fed. I've heard people suggest put bells on the cats, but that doesn't necessarily work. Have a nice conversation with your neighbors if your neighbors don't keep their cats indoors. Be polite about it. Be diplomatic about it. Be informative about it and not angry about it. Obviously, you want to get along with your neighbors, but you also want to protect the birds. And windows, finally, interesting fact about windows is that the further you get from the feeder, the higher your risk of collisions. So if your feeder is really close, like less than 5 meters from the window, that's actually safer for birds. They don't build up as much momentum and they can actually see the window better closer up. But if you're in the 5 to 10 meter range, that's actually the most dangerous for birds. So keep that in mind. But you can also do things like putting up this it's a fruit mesh that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. And you can string that up in front of your window as a visual barrier for the birds and a physical barrier for them to bounce off of. You can also get other ideas online, but if you use the decals, you would have to have basically 4-inch squares all over your window to be effective. And so if you do those decals, do strips of decals every 4 inches. Strips of you can actually get the stripping from abcbirds.com. That's a good place to do it. And some people just put up P-cord, just hang cord in front of their window every 4 inches. And it's not a physical barrier, but it's a visual barrier for the birds. And so then it helps to prevent window strikes as well. So that's real quick on that because I want to move on. Oh, there, decals, P-cord or netting. There we go. I meant to get that up there. Let's move on. Food for birds is beyond just what we offer in our bird feeders. It's also what we plant in our yards. And wildflowers are one way to attract birds to your yard. For seeds and for insects in particular, for berries, maybe some of the bushes and things, and we'll go over that. But these are some wildflowers that have been particularly effective. In particular, asters are really good in general. Sunflowers like Helianthus here to the right. Smooth aster, you see just that's the top picture on the right. Prairie dock, lower left. Purple coneflower is a really good one, as well as Coreopsis. I've had really good luck with Coreopsis. Coneflowers and black-eyed Susan, the Rudbeckia, is a real good attractant with seeds. and goldenrods as well as you move into fall. They attract a lot of insects, which the birds love, and then later on also provide a lot of seed. For hummingbirds, I suggest that you check out the Great Lakes HummerNet website. Just Google search Great Lakes HummerNet. It's also a link in the, all these links that you see up here should be in the resource list that I sent out. So, but there's a great list of hummingbird flowers, and these are just a few that I'll mention. Wild bergamot, bee balm, horse mint, those are the three on the top there. Indian paintbrush is the lower left. Cardinal flower, red. It doesn't have to be red. They will feed on flowers of other colors as too, although red is a really good attractant. So wild columbine is another good option. The wild blue phlox, foxglove beard tongue, the penstemon family. You can see how their bills will fit right into that to get the nectar. And late blooming spotted jewelweed is an important nectar provision for hummingbirds as they migrate south in the late summer and early fall. So Great Lakes HummerNet, great resource to tell you a lot more on how to attract hummingbirds. So I'm always going to be talking structure, okay? Shrubs and mid-story trees. So we're talking wildflowers. Well, now let's talk up a level, right? Shrubs and mid-story trees. We want to have access all the way to the ground from all the way up in the trees. And this is a nice in between. You want to have some of these as well. And some great in between stair-step plants that provide berries and food for birds are serviceberry, like you see there with the white flowers. High bush cranberry is great for berries. Even sumac. The birds love sumac. I've seen woodpeckers using it in particular, but lots of other birds will use the sumac, and a lot of our resident will use it. Raspberry and blackberry, of course, is highly attractive to birds. The hawthorns, the crataegus, in particular, punctata, get some of the natives that are best, obviously, and American crabapple, and again, native American crabapple, the Malus coronaria is a good option there. And then canopy trees. If you know of Doug Tallamy and Bringing Nature Home, that's a great resource. Check it out. He's got a new website that is called National Parks in Your Yard. I believe it's on the resource list. But he's trying to encourage people to create just a little bit of a national park in their own yards by attracting birds. And he suggests oak trees. Oak trees is the #1 tree for birds. And it's not because of the acorns. It's actually because of these little guys, the little caterpillars. These trees support well over 500 species of caterpillars, oaks do. Other trees do not support that high of a diversity of caterpillars. And when you support a high diversity of caterpillars, that means there's lots to eat for the migrant birds and the local nesting birds as well. So planting oak trees is great, not just, like I said, for the acorns, but for the insects. Other good trees are black cherry. Of course, they produce a berry later on in the summer, but also they're good for the caterpillars. In the early spring, right now, we've got red maples flowering, and those little flowers have some nectar in, and they can just eat those flowers. I've seen especially cedar waxwings and things devouring that. And even eastern white pine, the seeds provide food for a lot of different local species, and they provide cover because they're an evergreen. So those are all great options for canopy trees. So canopy, mid-story, and then down below, all important areas to cover in your yard if you want to provide habitat for birds. And leave your yards messy, right? The breeding success of songbirds in spring actually starts with winter habitat. When you've got extra seeds and things in a messy yard, if you don't clip it and clean it up at the end of the season, then those seeds are left for those birds during the winter time to gorge on. So tall, weedy seed heads provide valuable food for wintering birds. And so fall is not the time to clean it up. It's the time to decide to leave your weeds for winter wildlife. I like to add these little pictures in there of these birds actually using these seed heads. And these spring migrants and year-round residents are also looking for the last seeds that are left on these seed heads even now. So some tips on leaving your yard messy. Leave the leaves on your property. In areas where you can, where it's not a manicured lawn, leave the leaves, leave the ground cover there. Allow gorgeous dried flower heads to stay standing in your garden. This is a new way of defining what beautiful is. Remember, think like a bird. What does a bird find beautiful? Let the grass grow tall and go to seed. Build a brush pile, and I'll get to that after a little bit, with fallen branches instead of removing those branches. Forget the chemicals. That's a big no-no, because that decreases the insect life and can harm birds by getting into their bodies. Leave snags on your property if you can, if they don't threaten your home, because that's great foraging habitat and perching habitat for birds. And delay your garden cleanup until later on in the spring, after at least several 50-degree days, or even longer than that. Allow pollinators and insects to wake up for spring and move on before you clean up your gardens. And like I said, snags, really great for birds for perching, for foraging, and for shelter. In particular, woodpeckers, they make holes in these. Even dead branches on live trees are really important, especially for downy woodpeckers. That's what allows them to live in our neighborhoods, is they can actually nest in live trees in a dead branch on a live tree. So birds like to perch up on these snags, they forage on them, and they shelter in them. And the holes that the woodpeckers create also are used by chickadees and other cavity nesting birds, bluebirds, and the rest. So very important. So the question always becomes to cut or not to cut, right? You want to have a safe yard too. So I understand when you have to cut, you have to cut, but try to think about it before you cut. Now, speaking of water, I got to keep myself refreshed here. So let's move on to the next element. That was food. Let's talk about water, keeping birds refreshed and clean. The second element of that triad that you can see right here to my right here. There we go, this triangle here. Keep that in mind, food, water, and shelter. How do we effectively offer water to birds? First of all, why water? Why do birds want water? Well, this seems pretty obvious, right? Well, for drinking and for bathing. And when we think about why water, we also need to remember to think like a bird. So yeah, you can offer water out in your yard for drinking and bathing, but how should you offer water? That's where you really need to start thinking like a bird and provide it for them in the right way. How can you effectively provide it for them so that they can come in and actually take advantage of it? And one of those things is movement and noise of water. We'll get to that. And providing access to the water for the birds. So my question is, do you want this? You've got water, you've got noise, but do you have access to the water if you're a bird? I think I'd be pretty nervous going into that bird bath because I'd be out in the wide open for predators to see me, and I'd make myself vulnerable. So how do we do this? How do we provide access as well as movement and noise? Or do you want this? Something with some cover around it, with some moving water. Let's go into a little bit more depth with this. First of all, moving water is really, really important. And the simple part of it is using a circulating pump. And you get this noise. When you have a circulating pump, it pumps the water from down in the bottom. You can see where it says pump. It filters it, it goes into the pump, and the line takes it to the waterfall where it spills back in. So it circulates the water in your bird bath. This is what I use, a very simple version of this. My pond is not big enough for fish or things like that. You can see how the setup is here, and you'll see the setup in a little bit, my more current setup in a little bit. But something where you're getting the water rolling. You're getting water to circulate, and that noise is like music to a bird's ears. It gets their attention and lets them know that there is water down below. You can also mimic that if you can't do a full-on pump with a waterfall. You can do a little dripper, like the one in the picture there with a titmouse, where water drips in and makes ripples on the water, because the ripples are easier to see than just stagnant water. Also a little vibrator, a battery operated or solar operated vibrator where it creates ripples. That's better than nothing, but obviously if the noise is available to the birds, you're going to get a lot of action at your bird bath. Then access. You want to think about access from above, getting down to your bird bath. So from the canopy, think stair steps all the way down from the canopy down to where your bird bath is. Unbroken stairway down to your bird bath. So think about that. If you're a bird that likes to be way up in the tree branches, but you need water and you need to come down to it, how do you provide that pathway to them? Sticks as pathways. Use sticks, that, and we'll talk about brush piles in a little bit, but it's hard not to incorporate water and shelter together because they work together. They're cohesive. That's why I have both of those symbols up in the top. Shelter and water work together as teammates to get birds to your water, and you'll see that more clearly in a little bit. You want to have varying depths of water as well because there are different sized birds. Remember, this access needs to connect to something that makes them feel safe, and we're going to talk about shelter in a little bit, about brush piles, but make sure that your sticks leading to the water connect to that safety, to that comfort that birds need in a sheltered location, such as a brush pile, or in a shrub or something like that, even a living shrub. And cleaning. There's more information on cleaning on your handout. I'm not going to deal a whole lot with that right now because it really depends on how big you go. But if you've got a little small saucer pan of a bird bath, you're going to want to do that pretty regularly. Birds are not clean when it comes to water. They bathe in it, but they also do other things in it. So you want to make sure that your water stays nice and clean and fresh. And you can get some good tips on how to do that on the resource, that PDF resource that I sent out. So I've got a little 4-minute section of video that I want to show you on how I set up my bird bath. And so I'll mute myself and I'll let this video play. If for some reason it's not working, let me know. Just one of the moderators, if you could jump in and just let me know. We tried it out earlier and it was working. So I'm going to switch it to the video here and put myself on mute. Here we go. While this is loading up, I'll say that the link to this full video is actually available on the PDF as well. So if it does not work, you can connect to it that way as well. Give it just a second here. I may refresh this page and try it one more time.
Curtis, we can't hear anything.
Okay, let me try it this way. I've unmuted, and that might actually be it. I'll keep myself unmuted here. Oops.
Yes.
Let me get it to the right spot here. Get it to the right spot again. Oh, let me just do this. I apologize. Here we go. We're going to start it over. Finished all the rocks in at this end. Also notice I've got strategically placed sticks leading from my brush pile into the bird bath. This gives them a pathway to the water and gives them more comfort as they come in to bathe or to drink. Over here I have my pump tube leading to my waterfall, which is just a gutter extension that I found at a local hardware store and works great. Here's my brush pile. It's a conglomeration of a Christmas tree and a lot of other brush that has fallen out of my trees over time. Clippings that I've taken from shrubs in the yard. I have a couple of structural boards that I hang things from. And that's because I need to build up the brush pile high to reach up into the trees. Because when the birds come in into the trees, they'll come into your bird bath down on the ground a whole lot more readily if they have a pathway continuously all the way down to the bird bath. I think I'm ready to fill it up and see if this runs like it should.
Even as I stood watching the pond fill, this brave male cowbird came in for a look and for a drink. All just a very few feet away from me. I'm hopeful this is a good sign of things to come.
Now, let's see if we can get this to work. Well, it's off and running without a hitch. Notice the varying depths of water, from shallow here for birds like warblers and sparrows, to a little deeper for birds like cardinals, to even deeper over here for birds like blue jays or robins. They may also choose to take a bath or get a drink right in the waterfall itself. Also note that the sound that this waterfall creates helps to attract birds to your bird bath. Now that we're all set up, let's see what happens and what birds we're able to attract to the yard using the bird bath. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that little video there of the birds using the bird bath. I felt like I had to provide some proof that this works, right? So here's a slide now showing some of the other birds that have visited the feeder or the bird bath. Local feeder birds, local nesters like robins and chickadees, as you saw in the video. I'm not necessarily thrilled about brown-headed cowbirds, but at least it illustrates the point that it brings birds in, whatever kind they are, it brings them in. This also helps migrants like yellow-rumped warblers, like you see right above the robin there. I've also got a video on that on my playlist on our website, so you can find that there. The yellow-rumped warbler came in to visit the bird bath as well. Other migrants, such as white-throated sparrows, just to the right of the yellow-rumped warbler, white-crowned sparrows above the white-throated sparrow, also will utilize it. And of course, I like to decorate the area around my bird bath with wildflowers like this bloodroot. I also use a lot of ginger, some mayapple, some ostrich fern, and things like that. which I actually will talk about in one of the other videos if we get to that. So some of the other birds that I have seen at my bird bath over the years, and 3 different locations. So some of the pictures look a little different than what I've currently got, but you can see the picture on the left. I've got scarlet tanager coming in. Red-eyed vireo is on the top of, is the third yellow circle there at the top of the right picture. In the middle yellow circle there is a Nashville warbler, and the bottom right circle is a black-throated green warbler. They're not the greatest pictures, but they show you that there's actually that kind of action coming to the bird bath. These are not birds that will come to your feeders. They're not feeder birds. They're birds that are insectivorous. They're in migration, and you can provide that oasis for them in migration in your own backyard. Suburban, urban, doesn't matter. This was taken in urban Wyoming, Michigan, the pictures there. So wherever you are, you can attract these birds to your bird bath. And that was the setup that I had there in Wyoming when I lived there. I now live out in Hudsonville, and even in Hudsonville in the suburbs, I got this Swainson's thrush. Can you see that's on my hose in my backyard there? But even when I lived in Wyoming, at another location in Wyoming, I had all these Swainson thrushes come in one fall. So this is also helpful in fall migration. Can you count all of the Swainson's thrushes coming into the bird bath at one time? We've got, here they all are. 1, 2 in the bottom there, 3, 4, and 5. There were actually up to, I think, 7. I couldn't get a picture of all of them at once. So it works, and it's a lot of fun to do. At the Nature Center here at Hemlock Crossing, we've also got a big water feature. It's got a waterfall. It's a big pump that would be quite a feature to put into your own yards. But it's just another example to see how this works. So the water comes down the waterfall, comes into the pond here. I always put a stick in the pond here, so in case anything falls in that needs to get out, they can climb out. It recirculates with a pump down at the right side of the picture there. It circulates in a tube underneath the ground and comes back out at the top of the waterfall here. Notice how it's built right next to the brush pile, which is right in back of the waterfall. And here's another closer up picture of the top of the waterfall. The water comes up right there at the top. And again, notice how it's connected to the brush pile back behind. Sticks provide an access for those birds to come in. During the winter, you can get heated bird baths that have coils already built into them, or you can get one that you can plug in and put into your unheated bird bath and make it heated. In the wintertime, it's really a positive attraction to birds, because otherwise they have to be eating snow, and literally they will. But if they can get liquid snow, or liquid water instead of snow, that's a positive for birds. So make sure that they can get dirty very quickly in the wintertime in particular, so make sure you keep it nice and clean, but use a heater. I use one of those heaters that go into a feeding trough or into a water trough for cattle and things. I use one of those. I got it at a Tractor Supply, and that helps to keep the water open even in our big water feature there at the Nature Center. And of course, if you want to plant natives, can't forget about the cup plant. Cup plant holds water, rainwater, and can attract lots of birds, insects, and such to those plants, and can provide it even during drier periods. And if you have a cup plant, you can always put water right directly in it if it's been particularly dry and you need to. So cup plant is a great plant to attract birds. So the last element here is shelter. That kind of brings these things together. How and why to provide shelter for birds. Why shelter? Well, why do they want shelter? Shelter is the glue that holds food and water together. Without it, birds cannot effectively access or utilize their food and water. And I sound a little redundant because a lot of these things overlap with each other, right? The water and the habitat in particular. Now my main focus is the shelter, although you'll hear me say some things that I've already said during the water part. That's to re-emphasize that these things are together. You have to have both in order to provide water to birds. You have to have adequate shelter around them. So it provides protection and safety from threats from predators, from cats, from hawks, you name it. Birds are always on the lookout for those things. It provides comfort in weather. They can shelter. If the snow has piled up on top of your brush pile, they can shelter underneath in the little caverns that are created inside of a brush pile. And then you can provide access to the food and water, and they can feel safe about it. So do you want something like what's pictured there, or so do you want this? There's the water kind of in the middle of the yard. There's a big trunk of a tree and some flowers over here to the left. But if you're a bird, are you going to feel real comfortable taking a bath out in the open there? Or would you rather have something like this? A brush pile, some shrubs real nearby that you can escape to if you need to. Think like a bird. Don't forget that. If there's one thing you take away from this talk, it's think like a bird. You can put yourself in the place of the bird. That will help you out a lot. So one thing that you want to do is layer your habitats. I talked about this a little earlier too, but you want to have a canopy if possible. You also want to have mid-story shrubs and bushes and a brush pile with ground cover. And of course, those wildflowers too really help. But layering access from the canopy so that birds can easily get down all the way to the ground to where the water is essential to making them feel comfortable to access your water. And the brush pile is kind of what our focus is here. So again, layering upward, there's a Lincoln sparrow in that brush pile. You can see there's a nice space in there so that Lincoln sparrow can kind of move around inside. You want to make sure that there's space inside where you layer those branches so that they can move around inside and feel comfortable. But layer upwards toward the canopy. Always be thinking about the canopy in conjunction with your brush pile. So mid-story shrubs and trees, essential. Here's the brush pile from the Nature Center. This is actually an older picture back when it was looking like this and before we planted some other trees kind of in front of the brush pile and kind of hid the brush pile a little bit more because it's not necessarily aesthetically pleasing for our eyes, right? But there are ways that you can make it aesthetically pleasing but still provide brush to the birds. Provide greenery in front. You can also build up the ground, and that's what we did. We built up kind of a little bit of a mound of ground that the brush pile is back behind, and we've got some hemlock trees up in front now at the Nature Center. But you want to layer for spaces so that there's interior spaces for those birds to move around in. Here's my brush pile at home. Now, this is prior to a couple weeks ago, okay? I used fallen branches, Christmas tree, you saw it in the video, some brush trimmings. I left that video in there because I wanted you to see what the brush pile looked like then, but I also want you to see what the brush pile looks like now, because this is what I did about a little over a week ago in my yard. I cleared that brush pile out and I rebuilt it into this. And now it has been even, I would say, even more effective in getting the birds down in and providing open spaces back behind the waterfall. And this was the bird's eye view from down at the base of the waterfall, looking back into the old brush pile. This is what it looks like now. You can see all the open spaces, all the sticks that lead from the brush pile to the water for those birds to access it. So I see it's about 8 o'clock. I have got this and then not a whole lot more in the presentation. So we should be finishing up in the next 15 minutes or so with the presentation, and then I'll be available for questions or so. But I would like to show this video. It's about 7 minutes long and gives you the process I went through to build the brush pile, and will give you some great pointers with some visuals that I can't do with just pictures. So I'm going to start this video and enjoy.
This weekend, I decided to resurrect my bird bath. In the process, I realized my brush pile needed a facelift. It had been 5 years since I had built it. How did I know? Because there were 5 Christmas trees to prove it. Let's get to work. The first step was to clear away all of the brush from behind my bird bath. Looks like I have a ways to go to connect the bird bath all the way up to where the birds are up in the trees. I guess that means it's time to bring on the tools. After clearing out all the brush, I put a single post in the ground here to build off of. Then I screwed in a few cross beams here to give me more options for structuring the branches when I start to rebuild the brush pile. Next, I put 4 of my 5 Christmas trees back in the brush pile. 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the corner. Next, I started layering branches onto the support beams, even nailing a few to the support beams themselves. I even tried to provide special branches for the birds to perch on for easy viewing. All my work turned this into this, and I even added that 5th Christmas tree. Well, I finally got the brush pile built and the bird bath running. Let's take a look. First of all, here's the cross beams on which I laid sticks crossways to create a framework inside of the brush pile. That gives structure, yet spaces in. It provides a framework to build upwards. I poked branches in the ground down here, pressing them into the soil so that I could lay branches coming out from the brush pile down to the waterfall, giving birds a pathway to the water. Also, I have branches going around the bird bath to the bathing area over here. Notice how I intentionally placed sticks leading from the brush pile all the way into the water, and that you have water of varying depths for different sized birds. I built the structure and framework tall enough that it reaches to the bottom branches of this basswood tree here in my yard, which then connects to the birds that are utilizing the tree up above, whether they be warblers in migration or local nesting birds. The stairway and pathway from the trees down to the brush pile and down to the bird bath is essential in attracting and then observing birds in your backyard. The final element to complete your brush pile is to have adequate ground cover. In front of the bird bath, I have planted some wild ginger, which you can't see real obviously right now, but it should be greening up real soon. I also have some jack-in-the-pulpit right over here that seems to be just barely peeking out, and some ostrich fern over here. Behind the waterfall, I have a nice patch of bloodroot, which continues behind over here. And over on this side, I have some more ostrich fern right here. And I've had some mayapple right here. I don't see any sign of it yet, but I'm hopeful that it'll return again this spring. At the base of my tree here, I planted some Virginia creeper, and it's firmly established here and is climbing up the side of the tree, the trunk of the tree, and provides some nice greenery. And I'm hopeful that it extends itself out onto the brush pile here to provide nice greenery throughout the summer months. Now that the work is complete, let's see if it pays off with some action in the bird bath and in the brush pile. This female cardinal was one of the first visitors to my brush pile. Watch as it descends from in the brush pile down to the bird bath to get a drink. Notice how cautious it is as it approaches the water, looking for threats all around it and using each stair step to get down to the water. Birds put themselves at significant risk when they put their heads down to get a drink, so they require the utmost comfort from surrounding shelter if they're to stick around for a lengthy drink. Following the female's lead, this male cardinal also came in for a drink. Now watch as the male takes it a step further and goes in for a bath as well. For more information about backyard habitats for birds, see the links in the description below. Thanks for watching and happy brush piling.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It kind of consolidates some of the points that I've been bringing up, and hopefully gives you an idea visually what it can look like and how it can function to attract birds to your yard. If you want to watch the extended version of the cardinals themselves coming into the feeder, you can do that. That link is also on the PDF that I sent out. It's about 5 minutes of the full footage of the cardinals coming in. Kind of fun to watch. We won't watch that here right now. I did want to finish up talking about the brush pile and shelter by showing the Nature Center brush pile. And you might say, well, where's the brush pile? Because it doesn't look like there's one there. Well, as I said before, this is the look from behind. So the brush pile is there, but it's hidden by all of the greenery of the hemlock trees and the bird bath here, kind of a hill of ground. So it's back behind. And so you can strategize how you do a brush pile. Bird's not going to care, and help it to look a little more aesthetically pleasing from the front side. So this is the back looking toward the window there of the wildlife den. And here's some more of the brush pile here. Old Christmas trees that we use at the Nature Center work great here as well. You can see the nice cavernous spaces back behind. So is that right? Oh, no, I do want to move on. Bird boxes also work as shelter. So for nesting, for seasonal shelter, and you want to just make sure that you monitor and maintain them. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this. You can go to nestwatch.org to find out a lot of information on providing nest boxes as shelter. But not only do they use it for nesting and for raising young, but even birds like bluebirds will use it in the wintertime. Gathering together in a group inside of one bird box to find shelter in there for warmth. And this little eastern screech owl is they like to use wood duck boxes in the wintertime for roosting as well. And on sunny days, they like to come to the hole like you see in the picture there. But native plantings for shelter. When it comes to evergreens, it's a little tricky because there's not much to select from around here especially that isn't sun-loving. So most cedars are sun-loving, hemlocks are sun-loving. We also have the hemlock woolly adelgid issue to deal with there. So use caution when planting hemlocks in particular. Hemlock woolly adelgid is basically an aphid-like creature that kills the hemlock trees and has been spreading in our area, and we're trying to prevent it. If you want to find out more about hemlock woolly adelgid, you can go to savemyhemlocks.org to find out more information and information on the efforts to stop hemlock woolly adelgid. Savemyhemlocks.org. I forgot to make this one darker, but the Bring Nature Home by Doug Tallamy again. I can't say enough good about the suggestions that he has if you want to take this a step further. But evergreens would include eastern red cedar or juniper. Eastern white cedar or arborvitae is also a great evergreen cover if you can have enough sunshine to allow it to grow. Vines are also a great way. As you saw, I had a Virginia creeper, and it grows pretty quickly, so it can cover a lot and provide greenery even on brush piles when you don't have shrubs that are very tall. Riverbank grape is another example, and American bittersweet. There is an American, not the Oriental bittersweet. Please don't plant that, but American bittersweet is also another option. And then down to ground cover. I mentioned that in my video too, but wild strawberries is an option. They're on the left. Wild ginger provides nice ground cover, as does bearberry or kinnikinick, ostrich fern, and I mentioned some others too that I have in my yard, such as jack in the pulpit and mayapple and things like that. So just think outside the box. It's not necessarily food, but it's cover and greenery that provides more comfort for birds to come into your brush pile, into your yard, into your bird bath, and to your feeders. If they have a brush pile near to the feeders, then they're obviously going to more easily access your bird feeders as well. So that's one thing I didn't put in the video, but I'll mention to you, is that a brush pile closer in proximity to your feeders will allow them to stay at the feeders longer with more comfort and not be quite as nervous or tentative to feed out of your feeders. So same effect that it has in bringing birds into your bird bath, also for the bird feeders. But remember, keep it a little distance away so that those squirrels don't jump from your brush pile into your bird feeder. So with that, let's remember to think like a bird when it comes to attracting birds to your yard and building habitat for them to enjoy and utilize. Remember, turn angry birds in your yard by using these three things, turn them into happy birds. When these three elements, food, water, and shelter, work in concert with each other, birds are happiest. Can't say enough about it. I know I could go on and on, but I'm going to have to wrap up here. I do want to show you a couple of the resources that are on your resource sheet real fast. Just remember that no matter where your location is, if you follow those three rules, those three things, suburban, urban, rural, wherever you are, you will attract more birds to your yard. And in particular, when you're doing plantings, use natives because that also provides more food for the birds. So some of the resources, I can't say enough good about the Michigan Audubon link. That's why it's at the top of your resource page. There's a couple of PDFs that you can get. One is Michigan Native Plants for Bird-Friendly Landscapes, and one of them is Michigan Native Garden Design for Birds. So it's bird specific for different types of habitat situations. They've got charts here telling you about different plants and how they're beneficial to birds, whether they're for shelter or for food. Or for insects, things like that. So check out these resources in the PDF that I sent. And then also Doug Tallamy's Homegrown National Park is what it's called now. He's the one that wrote Bringing Nature Home. That's a great book, great resource, but you can log your own yard onto his website, Homegrown National Park, where he's trying to build a conglomeration of yards all across the country. Equivalent to, I can't remember how many millions of acres that he wants to create, one yard at a time. So log your yard in at Homegrown National Park and find a lot of resources there too. If you're interested about birds, go to allaboutbirds.org. It's your online resource for bird identification, any information about a bird. If you want to listen to the bird song itself, a great place to look up birds online. Project Feeder Watch for more information about feeding birds, and Project Nest Watch for information about providing nesting habitat and boxes for birds. The Cornell Lab of Ornithology is your go-to resource for that. So look for these resources in the PDF. And of course, the Ottawa and Kent Conservation Districts, they have their native plant sales and other resources to look at to bring birds into your yard as well. And Ottawa County Parks, we've got birding resources and videos. As you saw, a couple of them already. These are linked in the resource page. Bringing Nature to You is our online programs. We have in-person programs. You can register online at myottawa.org/parks. You can look up Coffee with the Birds, birding update email list. There's lots going on there if you want to connect into what we're doing. The best way to do that is to just go to our resources page, which is My Ottawa, so myottawa.org/birding. And you can find playlists of the videos and such, links to Coffee with the Birds, and resources on how to buy Birds of Ottawa County, Michigan, an annotated checklist. All of your information is there. So myottawa.org/birding. I need to update this slide on my presentation. That update has just occurred too. So with that, I want to thank you so much for having me, and I wish you all happy yard birding. I hope that you have success attracting birds to your yards using the suggestions that I have for you tonight. Thank you so much.
Curtis, wow, that's a lot to think about. That was fantastic. First of all, before we get to the questions, I just want everyone to know that the PDF Curtis keeps referring to, we will be sharing with you shortly, and soon it will be posted to the area where we're putting recordings of all our webinars and handouts and some of the slides, presentations. All that will be housed on the website at some point. We're working on that. So just be patient with us. You'll be getting his information soon. Hemlock woolly adelgea, I think people on the west side of the state are more familiar with that. It's happening along Lake Michigan. Several counties have infestations. For people in the middle part of the state or on the east side of the state, as far as I know, has not been any identified, but it's good to go on and just read about it so you understand, because you're going to start hearing more and more about it. Questions. We have all kinds of questions in the chat and the Q&A, so I hope you're ready.
All right, I'll do my best.
Please repeat the recipe for Orioles and hummingbirds.
There's a link also in the PDF, so you can watch that video a little later, but 4 parts water to 1 part sugar for hummingbirds, and 6 parts water to 1 part sugar for Orioles.
And Jenny answered this, but it might be a question more people had. What is a snag?
Thank you for asking. No, a snag is a dead tree. Dead tree, so standing dead tree. Has not fallen over, still standing and dead. Snags can also be a snag of a dead branch on a live tree, but it's basically a dead tree. Yeah.
Okay. Do you need electricity for the bird bath pump? How large is your bird bath?
Yes, I use electricity. I have a line that I dug underneath the ground out to it. So make sure that you get your appropriate cordage for that if you're outdoors. But yes, I do have electricity running to it to run it. You can probably find some solar options. I have not delved into that, but it is electric. I don't know how many gallons that actually is. I've never measured it. It's not real big. It's probably about 3 to 4 feet long by about 1.5 feet wide, and the depth of it is probably no more than 1.5 feet deep.
And then I had a question while you were showing that, because I know with my bird bath, I clean them out a lot and put fresh water in. I'm assuming you don't have to do that quite as much because your water is circulating. Right,
circulating water helps, but keep an eye on it. And it really depends on how much material you have falling into it. So keeping that clean, cleaning out any leaves that are falling into it will help prolong the life of the water that you have in your bird bath. If you've got just a small bird bath, you're going to want to do that every day or two. But a bigger bird bath like this, it's not as necessary to do it that often. However, when it starts to get murky and you see things growing in there, empty it out. and clean it out and refresh it with clean water. And it doesn't take that long, actually. I take a bucket and I empty it out, spray off the rocks. You don't have to use harsh chemicals. I just kind of scrub some of the algae off and things like that to keep it clean. And if you keep it smaller, it's a little easier to keep up with it. But depending on your situation, how much shade you have, how much sun you have, it varies. Just keep a close eye on how the water's looking and how things are growing in the water. And if things are growing in the water, time to maybe change it.
Okay. Do you have to turn off the bird bath pump in the winter?
I do close it down in the winter. Good question. Good point. Yes, when it gets cold, I turn my bird bath off at home and I put it away. I don't keep that heated and running through the winter. I have a heated bird bath, like the green saucer one, that I'll put out there for the birds in the winter, but I don't keep my waterfall running. Here at the Nature Center, we actually do, because we have more of an industrial, like I said, that for the watering trough heater. It's that heater is probably about this big around, and we lower it down into the circulating into the filter area of the waterfall, and that keeps it pretty open. But the movement also keeps bird baths open during the winter. So it has to be close to 20 degrees for our bird bath here at the Nature Center to really start freezing up. So I don't keep that heater on. That's a huge waste of electricity. But when it gets real cold, like 20 and below, and it starts to freeze up, then I'll plug it in. And that's just at the Nature Center. But good question. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm laughing inside at some of these questions because these are issues we all deal with. Once you decide to feed the birds, there may be some other critters that show up you're not so interested in feeding. So one question is, do seeds on the ground attract mice?
They can. Yes, they definitely can. The mice will take advantage of it just the same. You can think of it as you're attracting mice for the owls to feed in your yard too. But that brings up a good point. I say that a little tongue in cheek, but you want to make sure that you rake up underneath your bird feeders before things really get layered up as far as the stuff that's falling on the ground. So keeping your feeders tidy underneath is helpful. Because the birds spend a lot of time there. They do all their things on the ground there too. So raking that up, shoveling it, putting it in your, it's probably really good to put into your compost pile. Had trouble coming up with my word there, with your compost pile. So you can compost it. But yeah, definitely keep up with that by raking underneath the feeders to keep it from building up.
We're just wondering your thoughts about the new suets that are out that have pepper in them to discourage the squirrels. Do you think those are effective?
I've never tried it. I haven't heard a whole lot of positive or negative about it necessarily. So I can't really speak to how effective those are. If you do try it and those squirrels have been eating your suet and then they stop, I'd like to know. I've never really heard any tremendous success stories out of it myself, though. That's not to say that it doesn't.
How you discourage deer from raiding bird feeders?
Fences, tall fences. If you have deer in your yard, they can be hard to discouraged from your feeders. We actually do have deer in our woods, but they don't come to our feeders at the Nature Center. And it might be because of the amount of traffic, and our deer are a little more wary here. They're not urbanized deer where we are here at the Nature Center. Good question. Taking in your feeders at night and putting them out in the day, that's kind of a pain to do. Or putting up some real tall wire fence around your feeder area if it's practical. That's a hard question. There's no real great easy answer to do it. You could try the peppers too. I don't know if they like the peppers, but yeah, hopefully that helps. But yeah, not really easy to keep them out if they're already a problem.
And they also will attract bear.
If you live in an area where there's bear, yeah. When I was in Eastern North Carolina, a lot of people don't realize it, but Eastern North Carolina has more bears than the mountains of North Carolina, okay? More bears there on the eastern part of the state. And we had our feeders ripped up by a bear one time. I went out there and I thought it was some, hoodlum had come along and ripped up our feeders with a baseball bat. and then I saw the teeth marks in the feeder. So I've had that experience, yes. And if you live in the northern counties of the Lower Peninsula or in the UP, definitely you want to keep watch for bears, especially as we move into spring and those young bears are on the move and looking for new places. Then really the only way to do it is to take your feeders in at night. Yeah.
Yes. What about peanuts as a food source?
Peanuts are a great food source. In particular, the red-bellied woodpeckers like it if you're in the Lower Peninsula. If you're in the UP, you don't get red-bellied woodpeckers much, although you may be getting more of them later as things warm. Their range is expanding into the UP, but red-bellied woodpeckers, tufted titmice really like it. The nuthatches like it. What was I going to say? Tufted titmice. Yeah, there's quite a few birds. Blue jays and red-bellied woodpeckers are in particular like them. I like to feed them whole too. I'll put them in my tray feeder. That's where I like to feed them, because then the blue jays come in and can easily grab them and fly off. And it's a lot of fun to watch them come in and grab the peanuts. So I put them in the tray feeder in particular.
I have several of the peanuts in the shell, the ring that you can get, metal ring.
Mm-hmm.
And I have deliberately placed them away from my other feeders because it keeps the blue jays
There you go.
happy over there, and the rest of the birds can use the other bird feeders. It
Yep.
works quite well.
Yep. Some people get a little frustrated with the blue jays if they chase off the other birds. So always think about that too. If there's a particular food that attracts a blue jay, then yeah, you might set it a little further off. Yep.
And then just know you're probably going to be growing peanuts in your gardens. I have peanuts coming up in my peanut.
There you go.
Birds love to nest in my retractable awning across the back of my house. What can I do to make this less attractive? I've recently hung some old CD shiny side out, hoping the reflection will deter them.
If you hang something shiny like that, make sure that it still moves too in the wind. That will help, but birds can get used to things like that. Really the best way is to try to figure out how to build a physical barrier to the area that they're building their nests in. So if there's a particular corner of the awning that they like to go to put their nests every time, is there some sort of netting, or is there a wooden bar or something that you can nail up there or hang up there to actually prevent them from getting to that spot? That's going to be your most effective way. But those birds can be pretty determined, especially if they've had success in a spot before. They'll want to come back, robins in particular. So it can be a little bit difficult, but I would go that route. Try the reflective, but don't put all your money in on that one. See if there's ways that you can physically keep them out of the area that they're nesting in.
Okay, where can you get the vibrator that ripples the water?
You can find those online, Amazon or other places. Locally, you might want to check at a place like a Tractor Supply, possibly Wild Birds Unlimited. I'm not sure if they carry it. It depends on which particular store. That is a little bit more of a specialized item, so you may have to buy that online. I don't know if you're going to be able to find it locally.
And I just checked because I know Duncraft bird feeders and bird houses, they have it at their company, and they also have other ones that float in bird baths that are solar operated with water that squirts up and that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yep. There's different varieties of them. Yep. And they're solar powered, and then they'll bounce around from edge to edge and spray a little water around. So that would be a good option if we get enough sun.
Good thing to ask for birthday or Christmas present.
There you go. There you go.
What about a bird call such as one called the bird magnet? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with a bird magnet. I'm going to have to write that down and look that up. Bird magnet?
Yes.
And does it make noise?
I'm guessing.
I'm
not familiar with that one.
I've not used any particular way of providing noises to attract birds, but I would not doubt at all that putting some bird sounds in your yard, if you have a recording or something like that, would actually help. In particular, if you were to do that, I would play Chickadee Song or chickadee calls, because chickadees tend to be the leader of the pack in the neighborhood. And all the other birds will follow along with the chickadees. And so if they hear a chickadee, in particular migrants like this yellow rump warbler and other warblers and things, if they're moving through, when they stop, they hear chickadee flocks, and they, like a magnet, come into those chickadee flocks, which often is in the fall more so than the spring, just because in the spring the chickadees are actually nesting. As we get into September and those warblers are coming through in migration again in particular, then those chickadee flocks have formed up again with titmice and nuthatches and downy woodpeckers and things, and those warblers will come like a magnet to those flocks. Because those birds know where the resources are, food, water, and shelter, so they can attach themselves to that to find the resources they need, but also to have the extra set of eyes looking around for predators. So I'm not sure if that's quite how it works, your bird magnet bird call, but sounds could actually help. And you may even consider playing, if you cannot provide a waterfall yourself, you may even consider playing a recording of water splashing in your yard and loop it, because that actually would help too. But just make sure not to fake them out, right? Actually have some water out there for them. If they hear the sound of water, they're going to want to find it at the other end.
Are brush piles a fire hazard?
I suppose if you have if you have fires near your brush pile, if you have a fire pit or something like that, it could be. I don't have my brush pile next to my house. I don't have it touching my house. It's against the fence. So I wouldn't recommend you building it up against your house, though. That would be a little bit more of a hazard there. So I guess potentially if you've got a fire pit nearby, it could be.
When should you be cleaning out your bird houses?
You should be right now, if not already have done that. As far as for bluebirds and things, you want to do that usually the first half of March. Clean those out because those bluebirds are already on and being territorial. If you haven't yet, get out there and do it now. Like don't delay, and get those bird houses ready.
Someone is asking about using white vinegar to clean out a bird bath. And I have read and I do use white vinegar, but you will want to be careful using that around your plants.
Yeah. With anything, even vinegar, you're going to want to be careful to make sure that you're rinsing it into places that aren't going to impact plants, but also that you're rinsing it really thoroughly for the birds too, so that you don't leave residue behind. But yeah, vinegar is a safer alternative to things like bleach, for sure.
Yeah. How do you keep bully birds like crows and starlings out of the bird feeders?
You asked the ultimate question. I almost got done and got away with it without hearing. No.
I know.
Bully birds can be a bear to deal with. I typically have not seen crows coming into feeders, but blackbirds and things like that, flocks of them can descend on feeders, especially this time of the year. If you just last through it, they typically move on as they migrate and actually find their territories. Taking feeders down for a little while tends to disrupt their routine. So they might move on, especially if it's a bird, like I said, like red-winged blackbirds and things like that come through, or grackles that come through for a period. If you take it away, they continue moving on. You can put your feeders back out. Starlings can be troublesome, and house sparrows can be troublesome, especially in the winter when they're in large flocks. Then you might consider one of those, weighted feeders, because they come in flocks. Weighted feeders, they all land on it and it closes off. That can prevent them from feeding on it. You might also consider a feeder that has that wire mesh around it, like you saw early on in the presentation, that larger birds can't get to. Now, of course, house sparrows can maybe get through that, but larger birds like grackles or blackbirds and things can't get through that. So hopefully those suggestions can help you out. I wish we didn't have to deal with some of those invasive species like the starling and the house sparrow because they can be a bit problematic, especially in urban settings.
And then Judy wanted to know the name of our presenter, please. This is Curtis Dykstra. And, oh gosh, we have more. Hold on. Do you recommend always using gloves to handle your feeders?
Gloves to handle feeders. Not a bad idea to use rubber gloves when you're cleaning up because birds leave their dropping behind. I typically don't, but I'll just wash my hands real good afterwards because it is dirty. You don't want to be touching it and then go eat some food. You're right. So gloves provide an extra layer of protection. Yes.
And I think that's our last question. Curtis, this has just been wonderful. We can't thank you enough for providing this tonight. And I just want to remind people, tomorrow night is our last night. Marty McCleary will be back giving a presentation on Aldo Leopold, who's the father of land ethic. He was a naturalist, a scientist, ecologist, forester, conservationist, and environmentalist. And he also was a professor at the University of Wisconsin. So next time when you think you're busy, think about Aldo. I don't know how he did all that, but he's quite an amazing person, and to hear his story, I think we should all be exposed to that. So hopefully you can all join us tomorrow night. Oh, here's another question. Is it okay to pick up feathers?
Is it okay to pick up feathers? I do. Treat it, however, like you would any other thing that you pick up off the ground, and when you wash your hands. I pick up a feather and will put it in my hat every once in a while, for sure. Kids enjoy doing that, but definitely you'll want to make sure that you wash your hands afterwards. I wouldn't pluck a feather out of a carcass or anything like that and dirty, and you can always clean the tip of the feather too. That would make it a little safer.
And I'm going to leave you all with a comment that Barbara Springsteen said. Thanks, Curtis. I never thought that living on 100 acres, that there was more that I could do for the birds, but you gave me lots of great ideas. I think we're all feeling like that tonight. Lots of great ideas. And I can't wait to come visit you with Jenny so we can talk about our project at Montcalm Community College.
Definitely. I'm excited to help you out with that and provide any suggestions that I can. And thank you so much for the comment. I'm glad I can be of help. And just know that whether you're on 100 acres or you're on even 1/10 of an acre, you can make a difference for birds with the habitat that you build in your yard. I had 125 species over 4 years in urban Wyoming, where I lived. You can provide that too. You may not have over 100 species. I had a little woodlot in the back there, but that just goes to say that you can do this anywhere and make a difference for birds. So thank you so much for the opportunity to join you tonight. I've enjoyed it. And if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me here at the Nature Center. You can email naturecenter@miottawa.org. And I'd love to meet some of you again when we open up the Nature Center, and you can come on in we are open, but in particular the Nature Center Wildlife Den, and you can come in and we can enjoy birds together. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow night, and good night. Thank you, Curtis.